so I think mindset is everything. Like, there's this quote that I love where it's like, our mind might make the prisons, but it also gives us the keys. Everything is mental. Even though you've created this like bad mental reality, you also have the keys to change it. What your mind creates, it can also change. And so I've always like gone through my life like with that quote that like, okay, even if I'm mentally dealing with something, I know that I can also use my brain to change that. When you're transitioning to a new micro life, it's about having an open mind. It's remembering that you're there to learn, and that even if it's a failure, you're gonna learn something.
The following is a podcast with Sonia Dheer. She's a digital nomad, YouTuber, and entrepreneur who built the company Linkfluence. Linkfluence is a platform providing language education through self-development, community, and communication. She has a concept called micro lives, which involves treating life as an experiment and living as many of them as possible. She went from acting to interior design, to being a barista, to being a consultant, to now running Linkfluence. I hope this podcast is a reminder to let go of expectation and structure and embrace curiosities and passions. I hope you enjoy the next hour with Sonia Dheer. What up, fools? This is the Joe Pedrosa podcast. Today, I'm here with Sonia Dheer.
Hey! I'm so awkward.
No, it's okay.
Hi!
So the way we met each other is essentially we were both on set together. You were an actor and I was like a production assistant. You know the funny thing about that shoot is like I auditioned for it too.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't get the part, but like my girlfriend at the time wanted me to come, and I don't know, but I met you there, and you're like one of the few people that I've met that is super into entrepreneurs, super into like the artist entrepreneur space. Like I'm very glad to have you today because all the stuff you do is like super interesting. I want to first talk about like the acting thing. So like our origin story.
Our origin story, yes.
Are you still doing the acting, or what is that all about?
No, so it was funny because at that shoot, what I loved was the fact that I remember you were reading a Gary Vee book that day. You came with like Crushing It, I think. It was Crushing It. And I was like, oh my God, he's a Gary Vee fan. And this was before Gary Vee was like super, super big, where like everyone knew him.
Yeah.
So I was like fangirling so hard. I was like, okay, just found a new friend, because like not a lot of people knew. Especially in the acting space, I feel like not a lot of people knew about Gary Vee. So I was super excited for that.
Yeah, it's super dope. Are you still into Gary Vee right now?
Not as like hard as I used to go back then. Like I was like a little Gary Vee foot soldier back in the day,
right?
but no, I still like watch his videos on Instagram and stuff, and all that. But in terms of the acting stuff, no, I don't do that anymore. I realized that like it just wasn't for me, and it was a hard realization because like. Yeah. When I dropped out of university when I was like 19, 20, my dream was to be an actor. And like, I've always had this little like inkling to be an actor since I was a kid, but I was like, you know, immigrant parents, they're not, you know, they were like against it. No. They were like, you know, the four paths, like doctor, lawyer, business, or one more thing. I don't remember what it is.
For Filipinos, it's like nurse, doctor, and lawyer. I don't know the other two, but
yeah.
Are you still doing like, are you still into Tony Robbins? Like, are you into that whole sphere still?
Definitely still into the personal development sphere. Like that'll never change. Like if that changes, like something's gone wrong, and like I've been taken and replaced with some clone or something, because like personal development will forever be like my core passion and all that. It does change, like who I'm into changes. Yeah. A lot of times, like before it was very like Tony Robbins, Gary Vee. Now I'm very into like David Goggins. That's been a big thing for a lot of years. He's definitely like my like number one role model, I'd say. But yeah, so in terms of Tony Robbins, I would love, like it's on my bucket list to go to one of his like $10,000 events where you're like, we went to one, not
we went to like it's like a click funnel, like the beginning of it, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know, for me, like it's hard to differentiate like what is scammy versus what is like actually helpful. Yeah. Because like the Tony Robbins one, like I felt like, I also read up on him. Apparently the reason he has this authority, he has like this specific growth disease where like he just looks bigger. Like Andre the Giant had one.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. He just looks bigger. Like
yeah, he's massive.
do you remember when he was like running down? Like the security guards were running down with him. But yeah, he has this growth thing. So he just looks big. Like he's a big authoritative figure. And I don't know how much of it is like bullshit and then how much of it is real.
Yeah.
You know, have you like figured out that line? Like who's scammy, who's real, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's tough. I think there's a lot of like fluff to cut through for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I feel like even someone who might seem scammy to us, like helps someone else. Because for some people, like Tony Robbins just, it's almost like religion in a way. Like it gives them hope, right? So I'm like, maybe he's bullshitting, maybe it's just like the growth disease, but like if it gives someone the courage to go on another day or go after their dreams and whatnot, I'm like, who am I to stop you? Even if it might be a little scammy or they might be putting a lot of money into it. But yeah, it's hard to find that line sometimes. Unless, I think now it's kind of intuitive because I do read a lot and I like follow a lot of these people. So you can kind of like intuitively know like this person just wants my money or this person's like genuinely trying to give value to the world and things like that. But
yeah, for sure. So have you always been like, if we were to kind of like just have like a board with like artist and entrepreneur, because you said in the beginning of your life you wanted to like do the acting stuff, but like now I see you more towards like the entrepreneurial route. Like has there like which kind of side do you kind of lean more towards, you'd say?
Definitely the entrepreneur side. I think the artist side was more like aspirational.
Yeah.
Like I always wanted to be an artist, but like I wasn't good. So I was like, okay. But I still tried to incorporate aspects of art and stuff. And even like what I do now, it's all about communication. And that is both, I think, like a science and an art mixed together. So yeah, I don't do the acting thing anymore. I don't do visual arts or anything like that. But I do think I do have a lot of creative elements to what I do these days within entrepreneurship.
Yeah, like public speaking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I saw this like Google, because I searched you up because I always research like my guests before. I saw you like it was like this Getty stock image. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
You were like speaking at this event. I was like, wait, Sonia does public speaking?
No.
Do you know what I'm talking about? No. Okay, wait. Do you mind searching it up? Just search up her name, Sonia Dheer, like Dheer. But I saw you speaking at this and I was like, what? It's like young entrepreneurial pitch something?
Okay.
Oh, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. That was when I was like 7. That was like 10 years ago.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, that was like 10 years ago.
So what was that all about?
So it was like an entrepreneurship pitch competition that like the government of Canada or something was running.
Yeah.
And I became a finalist for that competition. So one of the parts of being a finalist was you had to pitch your idea at OCE, which was the Ontario Consumer, I don't know, it was some like big trade show at the Metro Toronto Convention Center.
Yeah. That
happens every year. And I had to like pitch my business idea to a bunch of, I don't think they were actually investors, but like business entrepreneurs, experts and things like that.
Yeah.
I didn't win, but it was a great experience.
What did you pitch?
Back in the day, what did I pitch? It was like an idea for... it was called Gen Y Brains. And it was it's all coming back to me now. But it was like this idea for like hooking companies up with like young people. So like I'm a millennial. So millennials at the time to like do work for them basically. And then they get like these portfolio pieces. And it was like this online platform that would let you do all that.
Were the young people, were they the entrepreneurial type too? Was that like the pitch kind of?
So this was all like it wasn't like a real business.
Oh, okay.
It was just like a concept.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And then if you like won, then you'd get to actually operationalize.
Oh, do it and
stuff? You'd get to do it, but I didn't win.
Oh, that's weird.
And someone actually ended up stealing my idea later, but he failed, so.
Oh, really? I remember when we were at the Tony Robbins event, you were mentioning how you wanted to do this, like kind of bridge the gap with like it was kind of like a gap year program.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
So is that Linkfluence right now, would you say, or is that did it pivot into something else?
That's definitely still one of the things I want to do. Right now I am like Linkfluence is kind of like a 2-part business. So one side is like communications consulting, so lots of like workshops and teaching people how to communicate, a lot of like working with businesses and doing their communications work for them. And then the other side, because like my number one goal is to transform the education system, because I know we both have issues with the education system. So my goal is to turn that frustration into change for the system. And that gap year program is eventually one of the things that I want to do to do that, essentially.
What, like, I know, yeah, we both do have frustration. Like, so where does your frustration come from? And, like, where do you think, like, what is the current state of education that you're frustrated with, and what do you want to change it into?
Oh man, how long do you have, Joe?
You got an hour. You got 50 minutes left. But I'm like super passionate about it as well, because for a long, like when I was in high school, for example, I went to a Catholic high school. I don't know if like you went to a Catholic high school, but I remember I like finished all my credits, right? And then I was at my guidance counselor. I'm like, yo, I want to drop religion. Like, I know this is not a prerequisite in order to go to college. And then she's just like, but you're a Catholic person at a Catholic high school, so you need to take it. I'm like, if you like look at the curriculum, you don't. Because I was skipping school to go on film sets. And I was like, this makes more sense to me, because if we're talking about in like a capitalistic like career sense, I'm doing the thing I want to do. I just have a head start. But she was just like, no, you need to do this. I remember my guidance counselor was like, when I was like, it was like grade 11 to go into grade 12. She's like, you need to take biology. I'm like, what the fuck do I need biology for in order to be a filmmaker? And then she's like, well, in case you give up. I was like, I'm gonna bring you to this damn school board, bro. But yeah, like that's my frustration with it. And a big part of it is like school, I think, is directing you towards working for someone.
Yeah.
You know, and like if we're talking about living an autonomous lifestyle, then entrepreneurship is the way to go, because like you're doing it for yourself. Like no one's telling you what to do. You're following your genuine passion and curiosity, and you're creating a business out of it. But like school is just like, no, this is how you be a cog in the machine, like a gear in the system. I've talked to this entrepreneur before. He said, like, he was also trying to sell me some Kangen water. It's like an MLM. Do you know Kangen water? It's like this MLM scheme, this like bullshit alkaline water.
Oh, I think my grandparents like bought into that.
Yeah, he was trying to sell me on some shit. So he was a scammer, but he actually said something profound, which was, you're a gear. Like if we're thinking about life as like a system and a machine, you're a gear. And what happens is, when someone retires, they take that gear out and they put you in. So the only way to escape it is to not play the game. But school is the game. School, like the education system is leading you to the game. Like if the internet way to say it is like the Matrix and shit, but it is true. Like there are other paths and alternative ways to make money to live a fully autonomous life. But that's my frustration with it. What do you think? What not even my thoughts, but like your own thoughts about the education system? Yeah,
no, I completely agree with everything you said. And just like, I found that in the education system, one of the things I had an issue with was that like, it sucks the passion out of learning. Like it's very ironic how you're there to like learn and stuff, but it very much bases a person's worth on like that grade you get at the end of the year. Like I went to a really nerdy school because I was in this like weird program. I mean, I love the program.
What was the program?
Can't say that because I work with them, so I love the program. But yeah, it was like a business and technology high school program, and so it was a very like nerdy program. So like it was one of those places where if you got a 90, it was like you're dumb. Like when,
really?
One of those situations.
So it was like 95.
Yeah, like 95 and up to be considered like smart. Otherwise, you just felt like not that great. So I just hated how it was always based on like you based your worth on things like grades and like just reading and writing the exam. Like that was what was considered intelligence and things like that. So I think the metrics that they were using were not right. I think that really affects a person when you're constantly told that you're not smart and that like if you can't do Pythagoras theorem, I don't know.
Like the quadratic formula.
Yeah, the quadratic formula, like you're stupid, you're not going to ever be anything.
Yeah.
And then also just the fact that I feel like school needs to place more value on like self-awareness. I think self-awareness has like changed my life. Like all this personal development stuff and really just like digging into who I am has changed my life. And I feel like school is a place where we spend so much time, but like besides careers class, if you remember careers in civics in grade 10, like that's all they really give you. They're like, okay, take careers class, take the My Blueprint quiz, and you find out you're going to be like a crossing guard.
Yeah, this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. For the rest of your life,
based on these like 10 answers.
Yeah.
But I feel like there needs to be more incorporation of like like personal development work and self-awareness work and stuff, because that really creates that foundation that you're going to go into your adult life with. And I feel like that's why so many people in our age group are like have identity crises and stuff, because like they don't know who they are. Like they might be great at biology and religion and business class and all that, but they don't know who they are. And I feel like that needs to be something that we focus on early on, and I feel like the education system doesn't do that. And that's something I'm trying to change with all my Linkfluence courses or programs that I do. The basis is always personal development. Like, you will learn the other things through learning about yourself. And at first people are like, oh, it's all fluff. But like, I think once you learn about yourself, you can become like the most powerful human ever.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I think if we were to change the education system, the best thing to do, I think they have these schools somewhere in the world, but it's like there's just a bunch of classes going on, and then you go in, like you have to go to a class, and then you just pick whatever you want, like whether it be math, whether it be like art, whether it be business, like so you're not told to do a thing. I don't know, it's so weird. Like school is like the only place where like we have this like general information, like. But then capitalism, when we get into our careers, we like specialize in something. It's like the opposite. Maybe it's just giving us like a baseline level of just like stuff to know, but it's also like I've never used a quadratic formula. It's like after leaving high school, after cheating on my math test, I've never used it after. But I completely agree with you with figuring out who you are. Like that would be the best way to figure out who you are, like just following your genuine passions in school. But I wanted to ask you, like, how, you say a lot of people have like this like identity crisis at our age, and I completely agree. How would someone know themselves? Like, how do you know who you are? How do you figure out who Sonia is, who Joe is? You know, like how do you figure that out?
I think everyone's journey is different. I think it's a lot of self-reflection. For example, even just simple things like journaling about your day, figuring out what triggers you, figuring out, your weaknesses, your skills, the things that you're drawn to. I think just a lot of self-reflection. I feel like people avoid that for some reason. Maybe they're scared of like seeing what's inside and unlocking this whole big thing. But I think by creating that mess, you can kind of also create it into some beautiful art piece. That was my attempt at being profound, but
no, it was profound.
But like, and then just I think people make fun of me for reading self-help books and things like that, but I'm like, those books changed my life. They've made me lots of. I mean, I'm not rich or anything, but like they've made me money in my career. They've made me a happy, fulfilled person. They've given me opportunity. They've helped me give myself opportunities to travel and like live the life that I love. So I think a lot of just like, I feel like following other people's journeys or learning about their journeys, like David Goggins, it kind of like collapses your learning curve. Because if I can learn from this person's mistakes and apply that to my life, why go through the pain when I can just like,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm all about like optimizing life and like life hacking and, treating my life as an experiment, basically. And I know we briefly talked about this on Instagram, but I also believe in like the concept of like micro lives. And I feel like we, especially in our 20s, we like focus so much on our identity and this identity crisis, and like packing ourselves into this beautiful box that we can like define. But I feel like when I stopped trying to define my identity, that's when I found peace. And like for a long time, I was like, oh, I'm an actress. That's my identity. Aspiring actress, Oscar-winning actress, blah, blah, blah. And then when that came down, I was like, oh my God, I don't know who I am. I'm nothing. But there were still other parts to me, but I just felt so tied to that one identity that when it was gone, I felt lost and like I was having this crisis. But then I started adopting this mindset of like seasons in your life and like living little micro lives. Like I'm 27 now, and I feel like every year I live a different micro life. Like for a while, I was acting. Okay, maybe not every single year, but honestly, for the first 5 years, I feel like every year was different because not for the first 5 years of my life, but from
like
ages
20 to 25,
it was different like every year because after I dropped out of university, I made the decision to spend the next 5 years of my life, so 20 to 25, just treating life as an experiment, like putting my ego aside, working whatever jobs I could work, saying yes to any opportunity, meeting people, getting out of my comfort zone, traveling, just anything I could do to kind of like enroll myself in the school of life, as cringy as that sounds, because I knew I wasn't getting a university education anymore. So I was like, I'm going to get educated in another way. And for me, I've always been like a hands-on, kinesthetic kind of learner. So I was like, I need to travel. I need to start businesses, fail at business, work different jobs, put myself in front of different people, you know, learn different personality types and things like that. So at that time, it was just like a bunch of different micro lives. It was like acting, and then I was an interior designer, and then I was doing, I was a barista at Starbucks. I was a consultant and like all these different things. And I don't even remember what the original question was, but
yeah, no, I mean, that's the beauty of podcasting and conversation. It just goes off into multiple parts. So I want to hear, because I literally have this as one of my things, like we messaged about the concept of living multiple lives or living mini lives. So let's hear the timeline from 18 to now, like each year, like what life have you lived in?
Let me try and remember. It was so long ago. I'm old. So 18 to like 20, I think, was university student. Lost university student. I was studying business at Laurier. And like I didn't want to do that. I knew at 17 I like wanted to just do my own thing, but I was scared of my parents, and I was like, they're gonna force me to go to university.
Before you continue, so with the business degree specifically, because I've never even like went to university or college, does that prepare you to become an entrepreneur? Because business, entrepreneurship go hand in hand. So what is a business degree? Like what entails with it?
I think it prepares you to work in like the corporate world mostly. So if you want to be an accountant or like a banker or something like that, then yeah, you probably should go to university, learn, you know, how to do all that stuff. But yeah, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so for me, it wasn't that, because even my professors, like none of them had started a business.
Really?
So I'm like, I'm supposedly learning business from people who've never started a business. Like, it doesn't make sense. But again, I fully acknowledge that for people who want to be business lawyers, accountants, that might be the path you want to take, and that's fine. For me, it wasn't, because I want to be an entrepreneur. University is hella expensive. I'm like, if I'm spending this much money on all, like this, I should come out like fully equipped to run a business. But I knew that wasn't going to happen. So I did a couple years there, like 18 to 20. Well, I did a year, and then I took a year off after my first year. Okay. Because I was like, I hate this. Like, I need to get out of here. So I took a leave of absence from my program, so which would let me like come back the next year if I decided to. So my spot was safe, so that satisfied my parents. And then I took a year off, and I traveled, and I like started a little business and things like that. And what was a business? I think that was my interior design business. Okay. Yeah. So I got I don't know if you know about the summer company grant from the government of Ontario. Oh, I've never heard of it, no. Okay, well, it's a really good thing to know if you are like a student between, I think it's 15 to 29. You can like get $3,000 to start your own business, and you get business mentorship. So that's what I did, and I started a little interior design company. And then yeah, so I did that, and then I traveled a bit, and just did like a bunch of different things in that year. That was my first taste of like, wow, I learned more in this year off than I did in school. I'm like, maybe this is telling me something. But then the next year I still went back to business school, because I didn't have like a solid idea of what I wanted to do. Yeah. I was like, hey, I've learned something, but like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I guess I should go back to business school. So I went back one more year. I absolutely hated it again. And I was like, okay, like this is not working. I felt super, super sad, and just like I was losing who I was. And I was like, I can't do this. So I dropped out. And then, yeah, so that was the life from 18 to 20, was mostly lost student. 20, I don't remember. 21? 21. I started being like an event planner. I started working for like a nonprofit as like a contract worker, and I would plan their events. And I thought that was super cool. I learned a lot, because it was a very like high stress, high pressure situation. And I took a lot away from that. I also started traveling at this point, and that became something that really stuck, because until then I had mostly just traveled with my family, and obviously like a family vacation is different than a solo travel thing. So I started traveling. I also started teaching English online. That became my next kind of micro life, was as like an English teacher, because I could like teach on my laptop and then travel.
Digital nomad.
Exactly. That's kind of where like the spark for digital nomadism came from for me.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was working as like a communications consultant at a small consulting firm. And again, this was online because I tried to do mostly online stuff. And then yeah, I kept doing these different things, but eventually at like 24, I was kind of getting exhausted. I was like, this is a lot of fun. I'm learning a lot, but like, it kind of sucks not having like a solid paycheck coming in. Like I wasn't making a lot of money at this time. I was like making a little bit, and then I'd spend it on travel, or there'd be some months where I made nothing because like I didn't have a full-time job.
Yeah.
It was just a bunch of contracts and stuff. So when I was 24, my dad came to me and told me that his friend had this like job opening at this big Canadian corporation. I can't say the name, but it was a big Canadian company. And she had seen me do work on an event, and she was really impressed by my work. And she was like, oh, I want you to like work for me at this company. So I was like, I don't want to do that, because my whole thing is I'm supposed to spend these 5 years just like learning and doing a bunch of things. And I know I want to be an entrepreneur. Like that's the end goal. I'm not supposed to sell myself to the system. But at this point, like I said, I was exhausted, and I was like, okay, I'll do the interview, because I saw that the pay was really good.
Yeah.
And it was like a cool, it wasn't a cool project, but it was like not super difficult work. I was like, okay, the hours are good, the pay is good. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go in for the interview. And so I went in for this interview at this company. And like, this was the most out-of-pocket interview ever. I felt like do you remember the show Punk'd? Where Ashton Kutcher would yeah. So I felt like I was on that show, because this interviewer, so it wasn't my dad's friend, because it was like in a different department.
Okay.
But she just like referred me or whatever. So one interviewer was really nice, but then this like manager came in, and he was insane. He was like, he was saying like, I have a list of like a bunch of stuff he said, but stuff like, he looked at my resume and he's like, oh my gosh, the work you're doing is useless. And he was like, oh, we don't have to pay you anything because you get paid so shitty anyways at your other job.
Damn.
And then he was like, what car do you drive? What phone do you have? And I told him, and then he was like, oh, you're a rich girl. Like, daddy must be paying for all that stuff. And I was like, I wish, but no. And he was just like going off. And then he was saying stuff about like my clothes and like some other girl's body. And I was like,
that's so fun.
Yeah, I was truly like shook. And I was like, what is going on? And like so many times during that interview, I felt like just walking out. I'm like, I'm being so like berated right now. Like out of respect to myself, I should just leave. But I was like, hey, like my dad's friend referred me. I don't want to like create a scene. I'm just gonna stay and deal with him or whatever. So he said all this out of pocket stuff. And then like after that interview, I went to my car and I was like, what the, I'm trying not to swear, because just in case someone work related, I was like, what the heck happened in that interview? And I was like, that's insane. I was like, clearly I'm not getting that job, and I don't want it, because like, why would I want to work in that environment? But surprisingly, the next day I got a call and they were like, oh, we want you. Like, good job. You're the front runner for the job. I was like, that's insane. And at that point, I had to make a decision. I was like, should I say yes? And like, the job pays well, can make me good money over the next few years. I don't have to worry about like hustling so hard. I could just like, go to the office, wear a cute little corporate outfit, and do my thing. But it would be going against everything I believe in. Yeah. Or I could say no and, believe in myself and bet on myself and keep going on this entrepreneurship path and keep like just doing my thing. And eventually I was like, both sides were kind of tugging at me. I'm like, I don't know what to do. But eventually I was like, no, I'm going to do my own thing. Like, this was a sign. I really believe in like manifestation and like the universe kind of giving you signs of things that you should or should not do. And for me, that interview was a sign. I was like, okay, that person, like that guy disrespected me so hard. Like the universe was giving me a sign that you are not meant to be here. Like this, you don't belong in this corporate world. And so I took that as a sign. I was like, okay, I'm going to trust the universe. I'm going to trust myself in my vision. And then I decided to just bet on myself. And I decided at that moment that I would never go in for another corporate interview, would never work a corporate job, even if I have to live with my parents forever or live under a bridge to make ends meet. Like, I'm going to bet on myself and take this to the end. So, that was like a big kind of watershed moment for me where I was like, okay, I'm going all in on this. And then after that, something just clicked and I started Lingfluence. And
at 24? Or 25?
Yeah, like 24, about to turn 25.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, ever since then, I was like, I'm so grateful for that man. Like, if I saw that man on the street, like, before I would have punched the guy if I saw him on the street. Now, if I see him, I'm going to give him a hug because, like, he doesn't realize that, like, him bullying me was essentially what led to me starting my business. Like, if I think back now and imagine if I took that job, I'd probably still be working there right now, would be so behind, would not have gotten the opportunities I've gotten through my business. So it's amazing how, like, things that look bad at the moment can later on be like your greatest blessings in a way.
Yeah, and like not a lot of people have that moment where they're just like, oh, like this is the sign to quit the day job, you know, because there's this Henry Thoreau quote. It's like, most men live lives of quiet desperation. You know, I've done 9 to 5s as well. Like I've worked. That's time. That's the timer. I've worked like corporate jobs. Like during the pandemic, I was working this. Do you know what e-commerce is? Like dropshipping?
Yeah, you told me about this, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to shoot myself. Like, like I was working for this dropshipping company, and I was working in this like gray office building, and like just this fluorescent lighting, and like it's just like no one talked to each other. Like the receptionist was, it was like the most terrible moment of my life, and I'm just like, if I stayed here, I would not like my life, and I would not like myself, because I would sell like my dreams. So like it wasn't even corporate, it was like a small business, but still it's just like working for someone. There's just, I don't know if like what it is like within entrepreneurs that they just have this thing where they're just like, I can't work for anybody else. Like right now I'm working for someone though. You know, a man's gotta get the money out here.
No, I feel you, yeah.
Yeah, like what I think is the best option like to do at the moment is day job plus side hustle. Until that side hustle makes enough money to get rid of the day job. But this is like I've been thinking about this a lot. This is my like path to wealth. I don't know, like tell me your thoughts on this. Do you know Naval Ravikant?
Yes, I heard a podcast by him recently.
Yeah. So he has this thing called How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky, right? And his whole concept is basically don't rent your time out for money. You'll never get rich because you won't make money when you're sleeping. That's his whole thing. So you need to create a business you own, which involves 3 things: accountability, specific knowledge, and leverage. Right? So leverage, there's 4 types of leverage, which is capital, labor, code, and media. So the first 2 are permissioned. So for example, if I build a gym, I would invest in like equipment and then I'd hire trainers. If I did a restaurant, I'd buy tables and invest in food. And then I'd hire like chefs. So those 2 things of leverage, that's how the old rich got rich. And the reason, you know, like it's still a way to make money, but the thing is it's permissioned. So same thing, we can't work, you know, like 24 hours in a day. If you hire like, even if you hire like 1 million people working 8 hours a day, there's still a cap because there's a cap on labor. And there's still a cap on equipment. There's a cap on like capital. So the new forms of leverage, which is code and media, it's what the new rich is getting rich off of. And you're doing it in a sense as well because you built a website. Like your website's working for you when you're sleeping. So code and media are the 2 forms. I don't know how to code. So the best things to do is books, blogs, videos, and podcasts. That's why I like fully went into podcasting and video because like I was already like specialized in it, and I've got mentors and stuff to like, you know, expand it further. So that's leverage. Specific knowledge is essentially like, what problem are you solving in the market? So, you know, you're solving communication skills, English skills. The 4 eternal markets that I realize is health, wealth, love, and happiness. Like we're all searching for it. I picked happiness as my form of like, this is what I'm serving to the world. But the one thing I realized with happiness is that it's a state. So you'll never be happy forever. You'll never be happy permanently. Like there's no goal that'll make you happy permanently. And there's also nothing that'll make you sad permanently. And the reason for that is because of this thing called the hedonic treadmill. We have a baseline level of happiness. So a better thing to chase is meaning, right? And meaning is found through kids, family, which is not my phase of life, and work. That is my phase of life.
Yeah.
And with work, to make work meaningful, it's like intrinsic it has to be intrinsic, and you have to be in a flow state, which is challenge and skill. So I found that within myself, which is film, travel, and comedy, and I'm like, I could live a personal, meaningful life, but I want to help others live a more meaningful life. And the avenue I want to do that with is with art and communication and like conversations and ideas, because like it ties into filmmaking and art, because I think a lot of people don't realize, like a lot of people don't think about art until their father dies or they lose a child or somebody breaks their heart and they're like desperate to understand this life, or it's like the inverse, they meet someone, their heart explodes, they can't even think straight, like stuff like that. I think I categorize that as truth. Also, like, the Aurora Borealis or Grand Canyon sunset, like experiencing beautiful moments, beauty, and then meeting like a lover or having kids or meeting friends, like meeting family, like love. Truth, beauty, and love is my specific knowledge through unlimited leverage, which is videos and podcasts.
Okay, gotcha.
And then accountability. Like, I changed my name to An Average Joe to Joe Pedrosa, so it's like, that's me, you know what I mean? It's like accountability. What do you think about that? Like, the path to get rich, or the entrepreneurial path, like, is that the way? Because like, I'm rolling the dice here, no one's telling me shit, I'm like, maybe this works, who knows?
No, it sounds like, you've got this amazing path rolled out, and that sounds pretty logical to me.
It does, right? Yeah. Okay. I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes, I was just like, fuck, like, am I doing the right thing? But yeah, I'm glad to hear it from like a fellow entrepreneur who's like doing their own thing, to see if that's right. But going on to the sense of the ultimate truth, the non-linear, living many lives. I have another question. So I have a cousin who spent like his entire life, he wanted to be a cop, right? And now like he's changing careers due to mental health, and he's worked everything like his whole entire life to become this thing, like, but now he's like quitting this year. Do you have any advice for people transitioning to another mini life? So he's not a cop, he's becoming something else, but you've done that multiple times in your life. So do you have any advice for people who are doing that?
So I think mindset is everything. Like, there's this quote that I love where it's like, our mind might make the prisons, but it also gives us the keys.
Okay.
Right? Like, everything is mental. And like, even though you've created this like bad mental reality, you also have the keys to change it. What your mind creates, it can also change. And so I've always like gone through my life like with that quote that like, okay, even if I'm like mentally dealing with something, I know that I can also use my brain to change that. So I think, again, it's just mindset. When you're transitioning to a new micro life, it's about having an open mind. It's remembering that you're there to learn, and that even if it's a failure, you're going to learn something. Like, I have trained my mind to be kind of like a serial optimist. Like, one of those people that like, even like, hopefully my house doesn't burn down, but even if that happened, I'd like, just my brain automatically goes to the positive side. And like, that took a long time, because when I was in university, I was kind of pessimistic, not so mentally strong and stuff, but like I trained my mind to be a serial optimist, and like even if something bad happens, it's for a greater reason. I learned something, I became stronger, and I think that's something to remember when you're going into a new micro life or mini life, is that you just got to have an open mind. You got to remember that you're going to get something out of this micro life, like in some shape, way, or form. You will get something out of it. And yeah, just have an open mind to remember that you're there to like just experiment. Like, I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss's whole idea of living life as an experiment. And so that's what I try and do. And when I'm in a micro life, I remember that this is all an experiment. Like, I'm going to use my findings to get better. And that's another thing. I think when you're in a micro life, don't just be in it, like reflect on it, like learn from it, actually treat it like a science experiment. Write down what you're doing, how it's helping you, or how it's like affecting you. I'm big on tracking. Like, I track everything every night. I have like a tracker of my habits, my mood, my day, my business progress, my goal progress, my water intake, like everything is tracked. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a psycho when it comes to that. But it helps because I'm like using these metrics to adjust how I'm operating and optimizing myself. And so I think that's another big thing. So mindset, and just also reflection and tracking things so that you can get something out of this. Because sometimes we're so busy being in it that we don't take time to think about how it affected us and how we can use that for our next micro life or for our next endeavor, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. so you track like the physical progress of things. Mm-hmm. Do you track the emotional state
yes.
of yourself as well? Okay.
Every day.
Yeah, because I think that's like a big thing that comes within transitioning, because like, for example, e-commerce to back to filmmaking, a big thing for me at that time was the fact that like I feel like I failed, you know, because I spent like 30 grand trying to learn this thing, and then I made 10 grand back. So when I tell people, I'm like, yeah, I made 10 grand online, baby. And I'm like, I really lost 30.
It's crazy about perception. Like a lot of like these Instagram people say like I made 10 grand. Little do they know that they lost like 30 or whatever. And, like, that,
but like a huge emotional state for me at that time was just like, damn, like I feel like a failure right now. And I think that's like a big thing when we're not in school. Mm-hmm. It's like that's at least you have A plus, B plus, you have those things. I don't know if it's the same thing in university. Is it? Or 70, 80?
GPA. Like,
oh, okay, yeah. So I'm just like, at least there you have like a progression of like to track. But I think in like the real world, the progression is money, right? Mm-hmm. I guess money and emotional state would be the best.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, so I lost both. It's just like I lost all my damn money, and I lost like I feel like depressed as fuck because I failed. You know what I mean? But transitioning, I don't know, like maybe transitioning to the idea like I'm not a loser for doing this. Like I did learn something from it, regardless of how much I lost or how much like money I spent, is a big factor, which I completely agree with. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but is there any like mental prisms you're facing right now?
Right now, honestly, I've been pretty happy and fulfilled for the last couple of years. I'd say like every day, like I feel really good.
That's good.
And like I journal every day, so I kind of on January 1st, I was looking back at journal entries from like 2018, 2019, and it was so different. Like it was just all like rage in my journal and just like sadness and stuff. And now when I read my journal every day, it's just like nice stuff. And I'm like, wow. So right now I'd say I'm pretty mentally good. And again, it took a lot of like training to get here, to build that kind of foundation of like mental toughness. And people like David Goggins helped me a lot with that. And I think another big part is just gratitude. Like I am like a big stickler for gratitude. Like I'm constantly reflecting on gratitude and what I'm grateful for at all times. Even just like while walking from my car to this place, I was like, it's raining. Like, I'm so grateful I have a coat that like protects me from the rain. Like people can't say that, like not everyone has that. So just like constantly being grateful for little things has like trained my mind to just be happy all the time. And like, maybe it's creepy because people are like, why are you always so like happy and energetic? But like, I don't know, I'm just excited for life and just grateful, and all that work I did from like 17 or 18 to 25, it's like I'm getting the reward for that now, I think, in the form of mental stability.
I mean, I think that's the best thing, because like I'm 23 right now. Mm-hmm. I still have that frustration in my mind. You know, it's just like, I made this video recently called How to Face Your Dark Side, and I'm talking about like the one part was like my dark side would be anger. Mm-hmm. You know, I would say, like, I don't get angry a lot, but when I do, like, I'm not a good person.
Really? I can't imagine you angry.
Yeah, I know, like, because I smile and shit all the time, you know? But, like, when I do get angry, like, I get really angry. And a big thing was, like, my frustration with my career. Because at this point, I want to be, like, working for myself, you know? I don't want to be working for anyone. I don't want the day job. I want just to work on the side hustle. Mm-hmm. But, like, I don't know. I think that I've had a podcast with someone else, and he even said, like, that frustration is not, like, you can use frustration to motivate yourself, like Mike Tyson, you know, but like it's not coming from a place of good. Like it's coming from like a bad source of energy where it's just like, yeah, you'll get what you want, but like I think at the end of the day everyone's just trying to be happy. You know what I mean? So like if you're using frustration and anger and all this stuff to motivate yourself, it's not the proper way to do it.
Yeah, maybe not the healthiest.
Yeah, definitely not the healthiest way. But in 2018, 2019, what were you frustrated about, like, when you were talking about your journaling?
Similar things to you, I think. It was just career and, like, not, like, we all want to kind of fast forward to, like, that success moment or, like, that point where you're happy and you have the money and you can do whatever you want. And so it was just like being in that journey, and I'm still on that journey. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not like, where I want to be right now, where I want to be, at 30 or whatever. But like at that point I was like really deep in the journey. And again, I didn't have my business. I was doing a bunch of like different little odd jobs and things like that. And so I was just frustrated with, same thing as you, like career. I'm like, hey, I need to figure out what I want to do and I need to like make it happen now. And then like things like social media don't help because you see people that are 23 with Lamborghinis and
and they're like on the beach and shit.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I want to be that. And I'm like, I'm their age. Like, why am I not there yet? And I always had this goal of like, I want to be a millionaire by 25, just like this arbitrary number. And when that didn't happen, I was like, oh my God, like I'm not even close to a million. Like even hitting 100,000 would be great by 25. But so I think my frustrations again just came mostly from career and stuff. I think as like these creative entrepreneurial people, we just have that inner frustration and that that discomfort in us. I don't know if it's discomfort, but this like uneasiness in us where like we need to accomplish this. We're constantly trying to push ourselves. And when we're not at that peak, we like beat ourselves up and get angry, get frustrated and things like that. So I totally relate. I also had major anger issues that I had to deal with.
I would never picture you angry.
Yeah, I know. But that was definitely something I had to deal with too. And again, like you, a lot of it mostly came from career and figuring out like what I want to do, who I am and things like that.
Yeah, it's very hard to get over it. I think the entrepreneurial artist is just, it's just like a whole range of emotions, It's just like fucking ecstasy on one end and then like depression on the other. But like if you live the regular life, then like average 9 to 5 life, I don't think you get those peaks. But I think that is what, like the peaks, the highs and the lows, that's what makes life interesting. That's what reminds you that you're alive.
Exactly.
And I think that's the most important aspect of it. So the podcast is going to end in about 10 minutes. Before I do that though, I wanted to ask you a question. So I asked everyone this question. I asked all my guests this question because I find it very interesting and I want to learn something. So what do you think the meaning of life is? Or if not like a huge cosmos, like looking at the stars, meaning your own personal life, like what do you think, where does meaning derive from? Like what is it?
Okay. As a communications consultant, I'm like, I have so much pressure right now to say something beautiful and profound. I'm like, can't look like a fraud. What is the meaning of life in my life? That's tough. I think, again, I feel like I stopped trying to define that as much because when I started doing this micro-life thing, I'm like, before I thought like, I'm going to start a business and it has to be that one business that I'm going to take until I'm 65 or 70 or whatever. But now I don't think like that anymore. I'm like, Lingfluence is my thing right now. Lingfluence is my passion. But maybe next year when I'm 28, that'll change. Or when I'm 35, it'll change. Or like 65, it'll change. And my mission will be different. Maybe like I'll get over the education system thing and I'll change to wanting to do something in, I don't know, the food industry. Farming, exactly. So I think for me, it's just finding meaning in every day and just gratitude. I think it goes back to, again, my meaning is, I think just being grateful and just living life as an experiment. I think I'm just like throwing out everything. Hopefully something will stick. But I don't know. I think the meaning of life is just to enjoy the journey, I'd say. And just, walk into rooms that interest you, that, pique your interest in some way. One thing I'm learning right now is that like, I've been walking into rooms where I feel like I wasn't welcome maybe, but I knew I belonged there. So like, when you hear about a university dropout changing the education system, it sounds very like oxymoron. Like, why was it like you didn't even finish the education system? Why are you trying to change it? And then same thing with even communication. Like I used to be a very shy kid, very introverted, very like socially anxious. Like I'd be sweating buckets right now back in the day, like antiperspirant it up. But now I teach people how to communicate, which people like if 10 years ago you told me that, I'd be like, there's no way. Like I don't know how to communicate. How am I teaching other people how to do that? So I think right now my meaning is just like enjoying the journey and walking into doors that pique my interest, even if they might not seem like doors that I would be welcome in. Yeah, so.
I had a question about the entering the rooms. Do you ever have doubt in your mind or like a sense of imposter syndrome when you're entering these rooms?
For a long time, yes, for sure. Because again, I was very socially anxious and had a lot of like ego. So I'd never wanted to look like a loser. I never wanted to look like I failed or anything.
You wanted to like look cool.
Look cool, exactly. But I think in those 5 years that I was like treating my life as an experiment when I dropped out, one big thing was like getting comfortable with discomfort. And like I wrote about this in my journal a few days ago when I was doing my like 2022 reflections, because I'd seen a friend's vision board for 2023 and it said like, get out of your comfort zone. And I was like, wow, I used to write get out of your comfort zone every year too on my vision board. But now like my comfort zone is where I live. Out of my comfort zone is where I live. Like I'm so comfortable with discomfort that it's almost the opposite. Like when I'm not, what am I saying? When I'm like too comfortable, I'm comfortable with discomfort before I butcher that whole phrase. But yeah, so like I feel like I live so out of my comfort zone that it's just become like a fundamental part of me. And so like now when I enter those rooms, like that's what gives me joy and comfort. Like in December for a few weeks, I was feeling a little bit like not like myself and a little bit uneasy. And I was like, it's because I'm comfortable. I haven't done anything like ballsy in a while. I haven't like done anything risky. And so I did something risky and then I felt better again. So I feel like these days I've just trained myself so much to love that discomfort zone that like that's my comfort zone now, is living in discomfort. So now when I walk into those rooms, that is my peace, that is my meditation. Yeah. If that makes sense.
No, 100% makes sense. Like I genuinely think in order to grow, you need to be uncomfortable.
For sure.
Because like I've been home for the past couple days for the holidays and everything, and I'm experiencing the same thing right now, or just like I'm just like chilling right now. But when I'm in Calgary, all I do, well, there's nothing else to do because like it's a small town it's known as Cow Town, you know. It's like it's just farms and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm trying, like literally all I do is work, because I think when like you're under the fire, that's when, like when you're under the fire, as in the sense of you're being uncomfortable, that's when the most growth happens, and that's when you become the idealistic version of yourself, you know, the person that you look up to. What is the person, like the most idealistic Sonia Dheer version of you?
I think it's someone who is just comfortable with themselves, someone who is, I'm very impact driven. So like for me to feel fulfilled, I need to see myself impacting people, like a direct impact. And so that's again why I started my business, because I needed a way, like a lot of the jobs I was doing, I didn't see that impact, and that's what was leaving me unfulfilled. Like I might have enjoyed the tasks and stuff, but I didn't see that direct impact on people. But through my business, I do see that. And so the ideal Sonia is having a large scale impact on people, is someone who is getting people to be comfortable with an unconventional life, because that's my big thing. Like I'm all about living unconventionally. Yeah. And that's the word I want to spread. It's like you don't have to live that conventional life. It doesn't have to be, you know, you don't have to settle. And then, yeah, just someone who's confident, living my values, like living aligned with my values, and just having an impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's ideal Sonia.
That's nice. Do you have any like 2023 goals you want to hit? Like,
of course. Like
physical, yeah. So what would they be? If you want to talk about it. If you don't want to talk about it, it's
fine. A few I can talk about are definitely things like travel related.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like last year I was traveling every other month. This year I want to travel like somewhere every month.
Like digital nomad?
Yeah.
That's so cool. That is so dope.
Yeah, that was like the ideal Sonia life as well. I was like, I can't be stuck to Canada, because I love Canada. I'm super grateful to have been born and raised here. But it's just like once you start traveling, you realize that like Canada is not the ideal sometimes. Like especially if we're lucky enough to have that Canadian passport and be earning in dollars or whatever. Like you can live a better quality of life in other places. Like here, people are like married to their mortgage and are just like living for their mortgage their entire life, or the expensive cost of living. The winters are terrible and stuff. So I do love this place. It's always going to be home in my heart. But I also do love digital nomading and working from other places and things like that. So I want to do more of that this year. That's definitely a big goal. I want to do some international events. So I do like last year I spoke at a conference in Bulgaria, and that like gave me this like next level adrenaline and dopamine rush. I was like serotonin or dopamine, which one? Psych 101 failed me, or I failed Psych 101 probably. But yeah, so I want to do more international events and like organize my own events and things like that. Yeah, so those are a couple of the goals. And then, of course, I've got goals for my business and things like that. I also want to take social media more seriously. I want to, like, build out my Linkfluence social media because right now, like you were talking about leverage and media and stuff, I'm like, this is, like, it could be a gold mine, but I don't use it. So I need to, that's a big goal, is, like, to take that social media presence seriously.
Yeah, with media, at least social media, there's no cost of replication to make the first thing versus like the first view versus the millionth view. There's no cost of replication. So social media would be the best way to do it. What were you speaking in Bulgaria? Like, what was it Linkfluence?
Yeah, it was it was a digital nomad festival.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it was like this big digital nomad festival, and my topic was on communicating with influence and impact. That was what the talk was called. So it was about communication and helping these nomads learn how to communicate with influence in their business and in their life, because I really believe that like everything you want is on the other side of like good communication. So yeah, that was the topic, and I want to do more international events and things like that because now I've got like the bug for
the travel and entrepreneur bug.
Exactly.
That's so dope. That's so cool. Just closing off the podcast, I wanted to ask you in regards to Linkfluence. I have like a ton of questions as well, but like the podcast, like the room's almost booked up.
Yeah.
But do you have any advice for people who want to communicate better? Because for me, at least when I was a kid, I wasn't a good storyteller. I was like socially awkward. You know, I didn't like when I went to parties, I didn't know where to put my hands. Like, what do I do with these?
Even now I'm like
you're like this.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people don't know how to communicate properly, and it's a skill to learn. Like I 100% agree. Like I've taken public speaking and stand up and all this stuff to try to learn how to communicate better. And I think digital storytelling is like a huge thing to communicate because you're trying to communicate an idea and influence people. And like Linkfluence is literally like I just like defined it as like the Google definition. But how do people like what advice would you give for people trying to communicate more properly?
I think just like you said, storytelling is huge. Incorporate more stories into your communications. Like ever since like civilization started, we've communicated through stories. It's how we've taught, it's how we've learned, it's how we've influenced. And so storytelling is huge. Learn to be a good storyteller and use that everywhere you can. And then the other thing is, I think, remember to listen. I think a big part of communication is listening. And I'm so grateful for that shy, socially anxious, introverted. I mean, I'm still an introvert, but I was more introverted back then. I'm grateful for that period because it taught me to listen. And by listening, I learned so much. And even now, like, I'm more of a listener. That's why sometimes even being on podcasts and stuff scare me because I'm like, I want to ask you questions. I don't want to talk about myself. I want to listen, like, learn from you and things like that. So I think listening is huge. You can, like, learn so much about people, about the world, just from listening and observing. So I think part of communication that people forget, people are so focused on using the right words and right, transitions and things like that, but they forget that like listening is a huge part of communication. And when you listen well, you have a greater influence. People like you more. Like I had a lot of people just like me, I feel like, because I just listened to them. Like I gave them undivided attention, because in a world where people are like constantly interrupting you, or like they just are waiting, like they're just listening to respond instead of listening to understand. I was that person that was genuinely listening to understand. And I was like, tell me whatever you want to tell me, and I'm going to pay attention to you. And I feel like that helped me have a big influence in my life and in my career and with people. So I would say listening and storytelling are key to being a good communicator.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson, he has, just closing off the podcast, Jordan Peterson, he has this thing where it's just like, pretend, or was it Jordan Peterson? Yeah, it was Jordan Peterson. It was either Jordan Peterson or Mark Manson. It was one of them. But they're just like, speak to someone as if they can tell you something that you don't know. Like, every single person is an opportunity to learn something more about this life.
Facts.
Closing off, facts.
You're trying to be a Gen Z here real quick. Right? No cap.
Have you seen that? TikTok's like facts, no cap, no printer. Have you seen that?
Yes, I use that all the time just to piss my Gen Z friends off.
Do you want to plug anything in before I close the podcast?
Yeah, if you want to learn, I'm so bad at these outros and intros, but if you want to learn more about me and my business, you can visit www.lingfluence. It's like influence, but with an L at the start, lingfluence.com. Or my Instagram is at Sonia Dheer, Dheer. And yeah, I think that's it.
Cool. It's great having you today, Sonia.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it was so nice catching up.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching the podcast. Stay on Average Fools.